All right, here we go. Great day, everybody. Incredible show coming up. It's Matthew Britt coming at you from Ottawa, Ontario. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And as always, first, my good buddy, Mr. Jim Gale, down there in Central Florida at Gulf Landing, rocking the Freedom Farm Academy. It's great to see you, man.
Oh, great to see you too, man. So many exciting things are coming together right now, my friends. For anybody out there who's stressed, who's fearful, who's just concerned and anxious and worried, let all that energy go and listen to this conversation and then take action steps in the present. And together, we're going to win this game, this war, whatever perspective you come from.
Cool. Yeah, Matthew, I didn't realize you were a fellow Canuck. You're up there in Ontario or in Ottawa.
I am. Yeah. Are you in Canada too?
No, I'm not. I'm in Virginia now. About 40 some years ago, no, almost 50 years ago, I learned there was a place that had no winter. I moved south, but I was born and raised in Hamilton.
Good idea.
I got out of Dodge. I actually moved to South Florida and then realized after a few years there in the winters, especially, only the rat wins the rat race, and it was time to get out of South Florida. So I'm in Virginia now.
Nice.
We have a teaching center in the Ozarks in southern Missouri. That's our home base. But at this point, my wife and I are living here in Virginia.
Well, let's dive right in, Dr. Michael Ryce. Why don't you first start off by telling everybody a little bit about you and what amazing things you're doing to change the world right now?
Well, actually, I'm doing more to change myself than the world. That seems to be the focal point that really allows the energy to move into the world, since we're not separate from the world. But I've spent the last 45 years as working with first century Aramaic language, which is the root language, interestingly enough, of 5 of the world's major religions. And it's not a religious language. It's a language, when I first ran into it, my original work was in the field of electronics with a side study in physics. And when I first ran into the Aramaic language, what clicked in my brain is, this is physics, this is physiology. And, I had been into naturopathic medicine, and that's one of my doctorates. And the idea of this being an energy system, the body being an energy system, emotions being energy, that, there's only one thing in the universe, it's energy. Lots of different people call it by lots of different names, but it's really one thing. So how do you understand how the principles work? And what I found was the Aramaic language had the technology thousands of years ago that we've lost in our culture. And the particular focal point that I went to in the Aramaic was the teachings of this man they called Jesus, but his name was actually Yeshua. Nothing to do with religion in what I'm teaching, but the work of forgiveness that he taught. And, you remember he was called the great physician, but a lot of people take him out of the category of a physician, that's exactly what he was, a physician. No different a physician than anybody you meet at the hospital or the doctor's office today. He knew exactly what he was doing. And people took him out of that category and put him in some miraculous, untouchable, well, you can't really do this, but he can. And the Aramaic was pretty much lost. And most of what we see in the Western world out of his words are Greek interpretations. They call them translations, but they're really not translations. They're so far away that they're interpretations. And if he sat in most places that talked about his words today, he'd say, it's all Greek to me. Because that's what it is. And forgiveness is an energetic technology for reaching inside yourself and removing whatever energies you're holding on to that never belonged. But because most people in the Western world are raised as very devout, religious, card-carrying members of the one world universal religion of blame, that becomes, of course, it's your fault, so I'll forgive you. I'll let you off the hook for what's happening inside of me. And if I let you off the hook for what's happening inside of me, I don't need to change what's happening inside of me. So he had a specific technology with which he knew how to show people a way to collapse the constructs of their mind, collapse their perceptual constructs, drop into that which they've been hiding from themselves, the generational pain, drama, and trauma, and clean that pain, drama, and trauma out. So in a nutshell, that's the focal point of my work. We have a teaching center in the Ozarks in southern Missouri, a place called Heartland. We've actually been closed since 2019, and I've shifted over into doing one-on-one personal intensives with people. But we've had that center for about 35 years. And one of the things that we did is we had gardens. And when people came to study with me, we did a total fresh and raw dietary regimen. Nothing was cooked. Everything was as close to the ground as possible. It was fresh and raw. And we would teach people how to prepare that food. And so that was always a foundation point. We had gardens at Heartland, although I never personally got my hands in the garden. About 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago now, my wife's father became ill. He was in his 90s and got to the point where he couldn't live on his own anymore. My wife and I had traveled together for decades, and basically we traveled 6 to 10 months of the year. Anywhere in the globe we were invited. We did our workshops free. We paid our own expenses. And basically, when he got sick, we decided that instead of him going into a nursing home, we'd stop traveling. We came here to Virginia, where he lived, moved in with him so he could stay in his own home. And that when we got here, there were about 100 square feet of flower gardens in front of the house. Well, we started working in that arena, and we're now up to just over 5,000 square feet of garden space on the property, eradicating toxic lawns and replacing that with native species gardens. Working on taking care of the native bees, not the honeybees, but native bees and critters. When we first came, our two bird feeders, we'd fill them about once a week, and now we can fill them more than once a day. The bird populations increased that much, and so we got a little corner here. It's not a big space, but we're working on putting out. We do a radio show 5 days a week called Mind Shifters Radio, and on that we talk about you can't grow food on dirt. You've got to have soil. And here's what soil is. Most people don't even know what it is. They think dirt is soil, and here's how you make it. And here's how you grow food on it. And if you don't have that as your foundation, then you don't have health. I don't care what you do. You don't have health. If you don't have forgiveness, if you've never faced the generational patterns of rage and guilt and fear and drama and trauma that are produced from within you, then you can't have health, because those energies are energies that, if you think of this body-mind unit as an energy system, hostility and fear are energies that are off the mark for the system. They don't belong in the system. And the mind functions through every cell in the body. So wherever hostility or fear is stored in what we call the body, that part of the energy system, is going to be sick. It's going to be diseased, dis-ease. There's an energy there that doesn't belong. Not an entity out there to get us, disease coming to get us, but rather when we hold energies that don't belong, refuse to forgive, don't know how to forgive, don't know how to even access our own unconscious dynamics, then we're stuck in those disease states. So basically, what I've worked to do in the last 50 years is bring together a holistic picture of what do you need to do to step into wholeness and well-being. And it starts from the ground up. So the earth is part of it. And then when I ran into what you guys were doing, it's like, well, this sounds like we're just right in the same ballpark. And I wonder what I can learn. I wonder what I can share. And here we are, just a short time later. So
I love it. Yeah, so I'm glad you're here. I love this topic because really, like you said, internal, external, it's all really one. We are one. We're an energy field, and we're represented as different illusions of separation, right? The ego edging God out, or the illusion of separation from the creator, the energy field, whatever you want to call it, right? And sometimes naming it will then turn a bunch of people away because we just named it and they don't believe in that name. Right. So when we forget all of the illusions of that, and just like Tesla said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. But I like to point out that there's one word I believe misplaced in that statement, and that's the word think. Right. If you want to experience the magic of the creator, of God, of the universe, then feel it. Do you agree with that?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, got to be. Well, one of my favorite tongue-in-cheek lines in my workshops is, in order to be really whole and heal, you got to be out of your mind.
Yes.
And we live in this little perceptual box. There's some interesting Harvard research that says that in a time frame where they can measure 10,000 measurable units of electrical activity in the brain, the max amount of data that goes into conscious awareness is 9 bits. And it's been estimated in that same time frame that we perhaps live in a 20 trillion bit world. So the mind becomes a reducing valve. And so 20 trillion bit world, 10,000 bits of information, 9-bit mind. And if something is resonated in our structure that brings forward some form of hostility or fear, and you don't know how to collapse that hostility or fear, you can't access the underlying dynamic to remove it from your structure, to get free of it. So we live in illusions. We live in constructs of the mind that are specifically designed to make sure we never experience the actuality of that in which we were created.
Yeah, I love it. So every belief system, every judgment becomes a filter and a limiting structure.
And it becomes literally the content. You know, many people think they see what's going, oh, I saw that happen. That's one of the biggest lies that's ever occurred. Nobody has ever seen anything through their eyes. That's a fraud. An eye, I'm going back to my physics work now. An eye is an antenna. It brings in certain frequencies of light. Those frequencies of light are brought into the eye. It's a one-way valve. You can't see out of it. But according to the information carried on those frequencies of light, that causes brain cells to resonate and the mind to build its constructs, its perceptions. So the world we think we see through our eyes, we don't see through our eyes at all. It's constructed by our minds, and it's not out there in any way, shape, or form. And until you collapse it, you really believe that, well, I was told this, and that was my upbringing, and so that's the world I see. But the world most people think they see out there, they have no idea is a world that's inside of them. And until they start applying to forgiveness to the errant dynamics in their own minds, they will massage everything that moves in them into looking like what they've been brainwashed into believing is true. And again, the by the age of 4, my take is that virtually everybody in the Western world has been brainwashed into becoming card-carrying members of the one world religion of blame. It's all somebody else's fault. And people go into resistance when you ask them to be responsible. Interesting, in the Aramaic language, the word Satan has got nothing to do with the dude with the red suited tail and a pitchfork. The word Satan means the resistor, one who misleads. Now, you look at the average person in trauma, maybe it's somebody I've known for 20 years. I say, well, I noticed that trauma you're talking about. I heard you talking about that about 3 years ago, and then about 8 or 9. And then when I first met you, you were talking. Did you ever think that maybe you're involved in your life and that might be something to do with you? And what do most people do? First, they hold their breath, shut down their connection directly to source, and they go into resistance. Oh, no, that's not true. Let me tell you what's really true and what they did to me. That's exactly what Satan means in Aramaic. The resistor, one who misleads.
Yeah.
And most people in our culture are trapped, quite literally, in Satan.
Yeah.
In the Aramaic sense of Satan.
Yeah. Which also means adversary, right? It's also defined as adversary.
Yes. Yeah. And it's because it's everything that comes from that state of resistance, which literally is physiological. And perceptual, everything that comes from it is out of that state of resistance, out of that state of don't make me look.
Yeah.
And so our own minds become adversarial to the truth.
Yeah. And I often reference a book called Molecules of Emotion.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I love it. Candace Pert, MIT.
I knew Candace.
Oh, did you really? Oh, what an amazing.
She was amazing.
Yeah.
When she left, I was very shocked. I was saddened and shocked when she disappeared.
Really? And why is that? Was it a particular way or?
No, just it surprised me. She was I don't remember exactly now, but she was a relatively young woman. Mm-hmm. And I had just seen her about maybe 8 months earlier. Not that I was personal friends with her, but we knew each other. We knew of each other's work, and I love her book.
Yeah.
It was just kind of a shock that she had left.
Yeah. Amazing. She's given the world a great gift with her insights, and that book is about how. Can you explain that? I've explained it several times, but I'd love to hear it from your from your words, how that works.
Well, she was a researcher that was head of brain bio research at the National Mental Institute of Health. And what she discovered was that when and it ties in actually with another cell biologist, Bruce Lipton.
Yes, I love Bruce.
That when we take an energy into our structure in the form of thought, that thought literally becomes a molecule in our structure. I mean, all of a sudden, something that is not physical, not that there is any physical, but on the level where we believe in physical, that isn't there, we think a thought and a molecule shows up, an actual neuropeptide. And that neuropeptide circulates around in our structure until it finds a cell with a receptor site that matches. It lands on the cell. And my take, Bruce Lipton would say that the cell replicates it. I don't think it does. If we were looking, if this were the cell, let me get my camera here. If this, my hand were the cell and the neuropeptide lands on it, if we were inside the cell watching, what we would see is what we call chemistry coming into the cell as the neuropeptide inserts itself. If this is a dis-ease thought, if this is out of harmony with the truth of who we are as love, something based in hostility or fear, then the dis-ease chemistry becomes physiological. If you go to the opening words in the book of John, where we're told it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh, it doesn't say that in Aramaic. What it says is, in the beginning was the mind energy, and the mind energy became flesh.
Wow.
We think of thought, it literally becomes it literally becomes chemistry in our cell. And so if there's a disease process going on, if we can't understand, if we can't and don't have the technology for bypassing the constructs of the mind that keep us in resistance, find the physiological resistance, soften the physiological resistance, breathe into it, and remove what doesn't belong, then we're going to pass that on to the next generation, the next. You know, you look at that story of the Jews wandering in the desert for 40 years. Now, this is obviously a pretty bright group of people. They've written some great stuff about astronomy, and we're expected to believe that they got lost in a 35 square mile hot sandy place for 40 years. I mean, does that make any sense?
No.
The word desert there is a code word for the unconscious. Most people are about 40 before they look around and go, maybe, I've been through this 87 different times with 42 different people. Maybe I'm involved in my life. And they start to wake up. They come out of the unconscious state. And if you read that metaphor, that story about the desert, you'll notice that what they said had to happen to get out of the desert and move into the promised land, which is nothing more than being a conscious co-creator of your life. What had to happen is the old generation had to die off. That doesn't mean everybody in old physical bodies has to physically die. The root of the word generation is genari. It means cause. All of the causes held in the mind, which is in the cellular structure, passed on from generation to generation, had to be faced and forgiven, removed. You must forgive from your heart the wrongs of your brother isn't a bleeding heart statement. That word heart is another code word for the unconscious. You must go into your own unconscious and remove that which you've massaged into looking like your brother, so you can blame your brother for this when it happens to you again.
Right.
So when you learn how to collapse that, then you get to forgive from your heart, from your own unconscious, that which you projected into your brain's image of everybody else and been able to point the finger at and blame them for.
It's fascinating. I was actually listening to Bruce Lipton this morning, man. He is just still going for it. Yeah. And, so this idea of thoughts matter, like thoughts literally turn to matter.
That's it.
It's so powerful. And then to become aware, right? Awareness is the first step in transformation or change. So to become aware, what are some skills, techniques, tools that you teach to help people become aware?
Well, first of all, what is the matter? It's the mind. That's what's behind it all. And, you'll notice that unless somebody's just a generally miserable person, they're pretty much happy with everybody in their lives as long as those people are doing what they want them to do. And notice that it's only when someone violates a goal that I have that I go into some form of hostility or fear toward them. That's the key way. That's the secret key way into forgiveness from the Aramaic. When you look at this Harvard research, so there are 10,000 measurable units of electrical activity happening in the mind, and 9 bits of data go into conscious awareness. Obviously, something has to determine which 9 bits of data are going to be used by the mind to build my perceptual constructs. What is it that does that? What drives that process? My goals.
Yep.
So the core of the forgiveness process is that of when hostility or fear is served up from within physiology and shows up as a perceptual construct about somebody, notice I have a goal for them that they're not fulfilling for me. In the Aramaic language, the word forgive is shabag or shabak, and literally translated, it means to cancel. So if I have a goal for Bill to pay me the money he owes me, and I'm enraged about Bill, he causes me all this rage because he never paid me, if I'll stop and recognize that I have a goal, and obviously there's some rage in the so to speak file in my mind on money, and I put it into my brain's image of Bill, like I did Harry a few years ago, and like I did Hortense 30 years ago when she didn't pay me what she owed me. When I recognize that there's a goal causing my mind to utilize the part of me that's based in this rage, and I cancel the goal, the construct my mind has made out toward or what I think is about Bill, that construct collapses. When it collapses, if I'll take a breath and just listen, that construct collapses into its own footprint, and I can now access my own unconscious dynamics. It collapses the function of carbon-based memory. It literally is a miniature near-death experience. You know, when people talk about a near-death experience, actually they're talking about a near-life experience. It's not a near-death experience. Most people, by entering into a reliance on and a belief of the perceptions of their mind, have entered into death. The truth of who they are doesn't function anymore. And if clinical death occurs, in other words, carbon-based memory and its constructs shut down, then one gets to experience themselves free of the constructs of hostility, fear, rage, guilt, drama, and trauma, because all of those things are energies generated by the mind. They're not actual in the world in any way, shape, or form. In the actuality, they're generated by the mind. When I cancel the goal and that construct collapses, I get to have a near life experience. I get to experience my life free of my mind. Just like the person who literally went through clinical death. Now, if they resuscitate the body, this person comes back and they're like, wow, did I have an experience? They've had a near life experience. They've tasted who they are without being lost in the constructs of their minds about themselves. You know, you listen to Yeshua 2,000 years ago, and he says, in order for you to live, you've got to die. In order for the truth of who you are being, you got to die to this self that's a construct in your mind that thinks you're a body and thinks you're, you know, you're this and you're that, and you have this business and you do this and you do this, and that's not who you are. That's got to go. And so I don't recommend people go out and chase a near-death experience to step into that. But every time you engage in first century Aramaic forgiveness, you have a miniature near-death experience, near-life experience, where you get to taste. Now, the mind is really fast, and it'll come up with its next objection really quickly. But if one enters into the practice, then they spend more and more and more time experiencing themselves as their actual nature, which is that of conscious, active, present love. And that includes all of us. I don't care who it is. Human life is love. That's it. Human life, best definition I've been able to come up with is human life is love flowing through a cell. If we don't have that happening, we don't have a human life. And just because somebody's got a human form doesn't mean there's a human life active in there. But there's a human life in there. And if we can activate it, the whole focus of my work over the last 50 years has been to support people in experiencing themselves as who they are without reference to their minds, being able to collapse their minds.
Have you studied Dr. David Hawkins, The Power versus Force?
I have not. I have some friends. I'm familiar with his book.
Okay.
I have some friends out in California that worked with it. Actually, the manuscript it's called the Kaboris manuscript. I'm the director of the foundation that is translating that manuscript. There was a group in California that did a test on it. Their scale is 1 to 1,000,
Yeah.
and they came up with a number that the manuscript measured at 980.
Yeah.
And when they measured my book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? They said the book was 920.
Yeah.
But it's not something I've particularly gotten involved in. Just I am familiar with it.
Yeah. I asked because he takes that scale and he talks about love, and he shares the frequency, the energy of love. And what you said is, it makes me think of that. It's an energy system, right? There's shame and humiliation and rage and pride and these very low energy stucknesses. And then you get up to willingness and faith and courage. And then above that is love. And then this massive amount, you become an energy system. And then love is just pouring through you. And then it radiates and lifts up everything around as an energy system.
Exactly. Yeah. One of the first things we do when I do the main workshop I do is called Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And people can go to my website. Unfortunately, I can't sell anybody a book. It's out of print. It can be bought fairly cheaply, usually on Amazon or eBay. But they can also go to my website, whyagain.org/book, and download the book free. And I think it's in 9 languages now on the site. So just whyagain.org/book. And download Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And the whole focal point of that book is stepping into personal responsibility, recognizing who we are. When I do that workshop, the first question that either I or my wife Jeannie, if she's introducing the workshop, will ask is, how many of you have ever held a newborn child? And then we'll make a list. I usually work with a 4x8 whiteboard. We'll make a list of people's descriptors for the child. And it's always beauty and sweetness and miracle and love, words that are some variation on the theme of love.
Yeah.
And my offering to people is, that's what we are. It's not something we do.
Yeah.
We most of it, we're all born exactly the same. We all come in as the presence of love. We live in a culture whose specialty is to knock the experience of love out of us. And then they send us out the door at about the age of 14, 15, 16, 17, and say, now go find somebody to love you. Find somebody to love, as though love is a verb. And now the mind chases a false idea its whole life long, trying to find love, when what they're looking for is what is looking. They are the presence of love. And so whole focal point is, and where that near life experience comes in, is when we can collapse, which is what canceling goals does, the construct of the mind, then we get to experience the taste of who we are without reference to the mind. And when that taste grows, what grows in us is literally the incarnation physiologically of the active presence of love. And that changes everything in physiology, changes everything in the mind, in our relationships, in our world, in our soil.
Yeah.
Everything.
Everything. And that is literally the answer to war. It's the art. We're going to write a new book, right? The Art of Peace. And peace starts with love and the understanding that we are one. So I just want to mention that for a second there, and I'm saying this, kind of with a smile on my face, you sounded a little bit like a conspiracy theorist.
Oh, really? Oh, which part was that?
When you said that they are, creating the system which creates these, and by the way, I am a conspiracy factist, right? And so I'm not a theorist at all. I do have my hypothesis, but so this is a question that I've been asking for a couple decades, is what is the catalyst for this? Like, that's a big question, but where does this start, and where does human consciousness really begin to flower and blossom, which is happening now at scale around the world? And let's get deep into how this is all happening.
Well, my take is it begins to flower when I realize that the constructs of my mind, which in this culture in particular are basically mostly based in hostility or fear, I learn to start to collapse them and experience who I am. When I start to bring who I am into my body, I bring who I am into the world. And that, as you mentioned, Tesla, frequency, that frequency then starts to resonate, and I start to tie into other people who are experiencing themselves and realizing who they are as the presence of love. And this physicist, Yeshua, 2,000 years ago said, a little leavening leavens the whole loaf. He wasn't talking about bread. He was talking about humanity. When enough of us incarnate in our physiology as the active presence of love, we will create a field that will, through resonance, because that's how frequencies work, through resonance, resonate that love, that presence of being that is in, I don't care, the person who's in the deepest drama and trauma is that active presence of love. You know, if I have two tuning forks, I have a middle C tuning fork that's still here, and I bring a second middle C tuning fork in, and I start to, wow, that really blows my camera out. I start to vibrate that second tuning fork.
Yeah.
The first tuning fork doesn't have any choice about whether it's going to vibrate or not. The process of resonance means there is an energy exchange, and the first tuning fork starts to vibrate. If I hold to the presence of love, it doesn't matter how deeply ensconced the person in front of me is in their rage and guilt or fear or whatever, you know, the games that are going on in the world today, that love starts to move. If what they do resonates to my rage, guilt, and fear, and I put it into my brain's image of them and said, look how you enrage me, then I just lost my capacity to function as love once again. And it's, to me, it's what I've observed over the years and working with people and doing my own process. It's a process of freeing ourselves literally of the generational patterns of hostility or fear and incarnating deeper and deeper and deeper into our own physiology, deeper and deeper into the world, connecting with others who are on the same path with whatever tools we all have, exchanging, sharing those tools. And when critical mass hit, the little leavening, then the whole of humanity is going to make a shift. And the main one that I need to focus on changing is me.
That's the key.
The whole game, the whole process depends on each one of us coming forward as the active presence of love. And when we can't, recognizing we have work to do, we've got to come out of denial.
I couldn't agree more. And that it's for everybody listening. All of the solutions to all the world's biggest problems, forget all that. Heal yourself. And then that is exponential.
I recently wrote an article on the whole situation that's happening in the Middle East on the healing process. And, you know, they're looking for conflict resolution. Well, that's nice. But conflict resolution, I mean, that's been going on forever. That's not going to change anything. What's going to change is when the individuals involved, instead of, we have a conflict, let's fix the conflict. Here we are in the one world religion of blame, thinking the conflict is the problem. No, let's heal ourselves and show up to the negotiating table as the presence of love. When people start doing that, the conflicts will melt and dissolve, because conflicts are nothing but a product of the mind. And that needs to be collapsed. And, you know, one of the things we have, literally the world's only forgiveness app. If anyone's interested in doing the forgiveness work that we teach, the app's free. It's totally, we specifically designed it because when people step into their forgiveness work, they get into some pretty private, deep stuff. So the app is totally private. When people download it, it only asks for one permission, and that is the ability to access the internet in order to operate. And at the end of doing the forgiveness process, there's a worksheet that the app guides people through. You can print that worksheet, and if you choose to print it, then it's going to ask for permission to save it. But otherwise, we don't ask for, you know, dial your phone, access your content, none of that. They're the only two permissions involved. And you can do the whole forgiveness process right there in the app, and built into it on each page of the app is a place for questions. Somebody's doing a step in the worksheet process. We've got a reality management worksheet. Somebody's doing a step and has a question. Geez, I don't know what this means. So there's a button, click it, write your question, hit send. My wife will receive it. The next radio show, which is no more ever than 3 days away, the next radio show we do 5 days a week from 1 till 2 o'clock, we'll answer that question. And the answer will be in our archives. We send a link back to that person so they've got an answer to their question. So there's always support for understanding the process and how to engage in collapsing the constructs of the mind based in hostility or fear and replacing them with active present love, incarnating as love in our forms. And doing things like when somebody is in that game of denial, and let's say, for instance, you try to serve them up something like a gorgeous, colorful sprout salad, what are they going to do? Get that away from me. if I take in all that vitality, I'm not going to be able to hide this pain from myself and blame somebody else. What are you trying to do to me? Once somebody steps into healing mode, then they're going to start throwing away the caffeine, the sugar, the nicotine, the junk food, the drugs, the alcohol. They're going to start throwing those things away, and they're going to be attracted to that which vitalizes and strengthens them, because you can't process through an issue from your own life or your bloodline. You can't process through an issue that is of a higher level of toxicity than the level of vitality that you have, because the body mind unit has this built-in suppress mechanism. If I have a level 7 toxin, but I'm only at a level 5 vitality, my system will never, I can say, oh, I want to work through this rage. I want to get rid of this rage. I want to heal this rage. I want to deal with this rage. But I'm only at a level 5 vitality and my rage is a level 7 toxicity. If I open that up, literally, it could physiologically kill me. There's a built-in suppress mechanism. Not going to happen. But when I eat that sprout salad, when I connect with another being and vitalize them and they vitalize me, all of a sudden, I get to that level 7.5 vitality. Now, this is one of the most difficult parts of the process, because when I get to that level 7.5, man, I've been doing all the right things. I feel so great. I am on top of the world. I go to bed at night and I am flying higher than a kite. And then I get up in the morning and I wonder why I'm lower than a snake's belly. And there's all this trauma going on. What did I do wrong? No, you didn't do anything wrong. You're right on track. You just hit a new level of vitality, and now your mind can serve up to you the next level of what you need to heal. So understanding the healing process is a really key part of doing that, and being willing to keep going for what vitalizes, what strengthens. There's an interesting story in the scriptures that talks about this, and there's this woman who has this 12-year issue of blood. Now, in that culture, a woman is the homemaker. This woman can't even, for 12 years, hasn't been able to go into her own kitchen because she's considered unclean. She can't even prepare food for her family. I mean, this is a really tragic situation for this woman. And what does she say? She says, I need to touch the hem of his garment. It wasn't about touching a piece of cloth. What she was saying is, I need to find someone with a higher level of vitality than I have, so that I can touch into that vitality and be supported, get my vitality up so I can process through whatever this is. And minutes later, her 12-year issue of blood is gone. And of course, the people who want to put it on him say, oh, look what he did. He did. No, it was her. She's the one who did the work. And each one of us have to take on and do our own work. And without understanding, there are a lot of pitfalls. And so the idea of what I've been working with for the last 50 years, particularly the 44 or so that I've been working out of the Aramaic, is showing people how to get to that gateway, how to get to that place, and understand the pitfalls that are going to come. Like, gee, I'm doing everything right and everything's wonderful and I'm on top of the world. And the next morning I am in the worst emotional, mental, conflict-ridden state I've ever been in. Well, that's part of the healing process. If you don't know that, you're in big trouble. Because what will happen to the person who gets up in the morning, if let's say their addiction was rage, and they get up in the morning and get that, then they're going to go off raging. Or if they're alcoholic, they're going to go off, oh, all I need is a drink. I need to cover this up. As opposed to, no, I need another sprout salad to vitalize me and process through this energy. That is my disease. And we have to own our diseases in order to free ourselves from them. So again, it starts from the ground up. That's to me why the food aspect is so important, and people being able to grow their own foods. If you have a field where you spray 10 gallons of glyphosate on the field to make sure everything is sterile, that it's totally, completely dead, and then you plant seeds, there is no life in that soil. How are you going to get life into that food? It's a business model. It's a game. If you can kill the soil, and there are no nutrients available in the soil because there's no life in the soil to give the nutrients to the plant, then you can sell that farmer chemicals with which to make it look like food. And then, because the food has no real strength or vitality in it, the bugs are going to come in and attack, so you can sell them chemicals to kill the bugs. And then you can sell those things at the market, and somebody will buy them and eat them, and they'll go to your pharmacy company in order to get something to fix the diseases, because they have nutrition-free food. I mean, the whole system is so insane.
And
And
it's all,
we need to be holy.
yep. And the
Work on
fact,
every aspect of it. Not this, but every aspect of it.
every aspect of it. And the fact that BlackRock is really running the show, and a computer at BlackRock is the one that makes the bets in our financial world, I think there's something really incredible about that. Matthew, did you had a thought you were going to say something?
Well, a little earlier, I was going to say about how the food piece and getting back into the earth is so important based on what he's been saying about everything being around love. And I completely agree. And the fact that we're so disconnected from the earth and providing that love to it is just another powerful mechanism in the control that's been implemented to our minds. Right.
Right,
and
to the level of grounding.
Yeah. And as we inspire people to move back towards reconnecting with the soil and the earth and Mother Nature and the love that naturally grows from that, that is not, I see it as a way that, again, seeing that word, it's in my brain as a thing that will speed up the process of the awakening into that love state. Right. So the more people, based on what Jim and I do, the more people we can inspire to get back reconnected with the land and grow food on their property, working with nature, the faster we can get this love frequency radiating from more people to then shift the rest, right?
I'm with you 100%.
Yeah.
Back several decades ago, there was a group in Canada that was measuring what's called the Schumann resonance, a frequency put off by the earth. Or at least that was the theory. And there was a group up in Canada who were measuring it, and it was becoming so low in many places it was almost unmeasurable. And as they're looking for ways to figure out what's going on here, what they discovered was that one of the places they could reliably measure the Schumann resonance was if they were at a large sporting event and the home team scored.
Wow.
I.e., people go into joy. And to me, what that said is, no, this is not a frequency that comes off of the earth. This is a frequency that we're the antenna to deliver it to the earth. Yeah. So when people are out of alignment, if the antenna, and that's the core, I do a personal one-on-one 3-day intensive, 3 to 5 day intensive with people, where one of the things I work on is aligning the antenna of the structure. Because if our antenna, and that's the bony structure of the head, the spine, and the pelvis, are out of alignment, then we're not bringing in the frequencies we're designed to bring in. Yeah. And the main barrier to that is living in hostility or fear, which distorts, creates disease processes right down to and including into the antenna. In this situation where the home team scores and everybody for a moment aligns with joy, yeah, look, we won. We're receptors. We're bringing this frequency into the earth and we're feeding the earth with it. So I think you're right on track there. I'm with you 100% on that one. And that's what we're designed to do. But if we're out of alignment, if we've been physically, mentally, or emotionally traumatized and the antenna's out of alignment, then
yeah. So
we aren't fed. We don't bring in the frequencies that are needed. If let's say a particular part of the antenna brings in the frequencies that the liver needs, and that kid's, say, dropped on their head and their neck is cranked, and that part of the antenna that feeds the liver is out of alignment, then they'll surge the liver, they'll drug the liver, they'll replace the liver. But it's like a light bulb. If there's no energy coming into it, of course, it's not going to work. Doesn't matter how many times you replace it. And so bringing ourselves into alignment is a core piece of that puzzle. And that's the core of the quantum still point energy that I do as an intensive.
That's fantastic. So earlier, too, you mentioned that a lot of times when people are starting to feel that stress, it's like detoxing, right? That energy, and they go through pain. And typically what we're taught to do is go to the doctor and get a suppressant. Get something to drug and mask the pain, the symptom.
Shut it down.
Yep. And David Hawkins, and he described one of his transitional moments or times when he said it was the most painful experience of his life. And I went through that about 2 years ago. And what I did, I don't ever, if I break my arm, I'll go to the doctor. I think mechanically they're fantastic. When it comes to pharmaceuticals, I think it's a travesty, and it's part of the reason the world is suffering. But anyway, I was feeling internally, doing a lot of meditation, a lot of stuff. I was eating better than I'd ever eaten in my life. And all of a sudden, I started getting sick. I started getting this incredible symptomatic, incredible. And I went through a weekend. It was the toughest weekend of my life, the most painful experience I've ever been through. And at the end of it, I was meditating. I was taking deep breaths, and I was using all my consciousness, all my awareness to go into it. And I saw this red ball of energy, and I just went into that energy, and I became aware at a cellular level that I was that energy. And as soon as I got to a certain point of connection with that energy, it just all went, and I was healed. And it went like that. And it was such an epic experience. And so it's for all those who are going through, there's more people sick right now that I know personally in the last months and years than any time ever. And that's because we're all experiencing the ascension of human consciousness, and we're going through this detoxification period.
Yeah, my take is that, when we realize that we're energy systems, when we bring an energy in, that energy we bring in reflects in our physiology symptomatically. It's wonderful or it's terrible. They're symptoms. When the energy is going out, the symptoms are identical, and the symptoms of disease are precisely the same as the symptoms of healing. It's just what direction is the energy going. And what you just described over that weekend is a classic healing crisis in the system of medicine I'm trained in. It's the body processing out what load it doesn't need to carry. That's what forgiveness is. That is the precise definition of forgiveness from the Aramaic, the removal of that. And as you say, though, unfortunately, most people go, oh, I'm symptomatic, I better go see the doctor. There are some measuring sticks that will tell you when you're symptomatic, whether you're in a disease process or a healing process. You ask yourself some questions. One, have I been doing more and more of the right things in my life? Nutritionally, relationally, emotionally, exercise, diet. If I'm doing that, then that's step one that says this is probably a healing process going on. Number two, just before it happened, had I hit a new level of vitality? I went to bed last night, I was feeling really high. Maybe. Okay, that's number two that says you're in a healing process. Number three, have I experienced these symptoms before? And if I can say, I remember when I was 2, they told me about that. That's, and when I start answering those questions, yes, then I can reliably say I'm in a healing process. I'm going to stay connected to the breath as you did. I'm going to only eat that which my structure calls for, which might mean just good, clean, clear water to hydrate me, which is a form of baptism for the forgiveness of sin. By the way, the word sin in Aramaic is an archery term. It's got nothing to do with some evil, terrible thing. You fired at the target, and if you miss the bullseye, the scorekeeper yelled sin. You're off the mark. That's all it means. And so when I am in this level of vitality, then I can remove these toxic energies. But if I'm dehydrated and those energies are stuck in the cell and the cell is dehydrated, my errant energy can't be removed. My sin cannot be forgiven. But when I hydrate myself, literally baptizing my body with water, then I enable the whole structure to throw off what doesn't belong. I increase eliminative process, and I accelerate and assist in removing what never belonged. And then if I breathe, it's interesting. You look at this man, Yeshua, and again, this has got nothing to do with theology. It's how the healing system works for the human form. But you look at him and, as a Jewish man, he did what was required of him. Everybody went to the river and got baptized. But you'll notice he never baptized anybody with water. He never poured water on anybody. What did he do? He taught them how to breathe. He baptized in the Spirit. Now, if you go back into the Aramaic in the creation story, it doesn't say God sent out his Spirit. It says the Creator sent out its breath. Ruka de kucha. It's our direct connection. And in Aramaic, that's defined as a feminine elemental force in us that undoes the effects of our errors and teaches us the truth. And it is literally the breath. If I don't breathe, I am cut off from the energy that processes out and forgives, removes what doesn't belong. So when I reconnect with the breath, and through my pain or my trauma, whatever symptoms I'm moving through, then my field opens and I'm able to remove what never belonged. Hold the breath and the energy is locked down, crystallized. Breathe into those crystals, let them soften and let them open, and you enter into a healing process. And a healing crisis in the system of medicine called naturopathy is a desirable thing. The objective is to become symptomatic physically, mentally, emotionally, and keep the energy processing, keep love conscious, active, and present, keep your human life present in your human form, and process out those energies that never belonged.
That's it. Oh man, I love this. This is something. So I'll share a little bit too, and we'll talk a lot more through email and after this about our Earth Council and our goals. And we have some of the world's leading trauma communicators and speakers. Theo Fleury, who was a six-time world champion in hockey, and he was raped many times as a young player, suffered great trauma. He is now on stages all over the world talking about how to overcome trauma. And I think he and you would make a great team. Your information, along with his speaking ability and his platform, I think would be incredible, and his information as well. Another guy, Dr. Andre Norman, he was 14 years in maximum security prison, 2 years in solitary confinement. And he got an epiphany in solitary that he was going to get out and go to Harvard. So he did. And now he's spent the last 20 some years as one of the world's leader in prison reform. And so he's now
Boy, that's
started.
needed.
Yes. And so we're going to actually, we in permaculture, we turn the problem into the solution. So he now is the founder and CEO of the largest university in the world, with 650,000 inmates already enrolled in Second Chance University. So we're creating the curriculum where they each have like their own little iPad, and he is kind of the gatekeeper on the content. So we're creating all this content, and what you're describing, we would love to get this in the hands of the inmates. And then
I have the content.
I know you do.
I have the content.
it.
I co-created a course called Laws of Living, which we took into the prisons and cut recidivism by over 90%. Teaching exactly what we're talking about. We've got a whole course called Laws of Living. It's a 16-day course, and it was taught. We had an organization called Social Service Agency in Albany, Georgia, and the judge there, the Superior Court judge, would sentence people to Laws of Living as part of their healing process. And we cut recidivism by over 90% until the sheriff's jails were empty and there was no money, and he got it kicked out because they get a per diem rate from the state. And if they got nobody in their beds, they don't get their per diem. So the whole game has to be shifted so that the objective is to keep the jail empty. Let's give the jailer a good income if he keeps his jail empty, that he keeps people healthy and whole and well. So we have a whole course. I mean, that's been in existence for over 20 years now. And so I've got the material.
Oh my gosh, this is so divinely connected, as all things are. And so we follow Dr. Martin Luther King's advice. Those who love peace must learn to organize as effectively as those who love war. And then we stack on Bucky Fuller's sentiment: you cannot change things by fighting the existing reality. Instead, you must create a new model that makes the current model obsolete. Yeah, exactly. So with your wisdom and information, with the Earth Council's wisdom and information, and organizing effectively, we are going to help these inmates transition on work release into farmers, into healers in the field. And because our food supply chain has been weaponized and it is toxic. And so when Henry Kissinger, 50 years ago, he said, in 1974, he said, if you want to control nations, control energy. If you want to control the world's currency. If you want to control people, control food. Right. So this is the strategy spoken by the man who met with every U.S. president since his time. So my point is food, poison-free, healthy food and good soil. And we've got the best soil experts in the world on our team as well. And we organize to help release these traumas, which is the root cause of all human suffering. And then we add on and we organize these different elements, and we then bring these inmates from prisons where they're $80,000 a year on average to keep this inmate incarcerated.
Yeah. It's a big
Insane.
business.
It's a big business.
Big business. You'll notice that a couple of administrations ago, they rid the world of private prisons. And then in 2016, they brought private prisons back because it's big money. It's business.
Yep. And then they connect with the judges. And it all becomes this big wheel of money and enslavement. But now's the time. The world is shifting radically. And with a coordinated media energy. Like I just share with you right here, I built 10 homes on this property. We produce all of our own food, water, and energy. We don't need anything from the outside world to thrive. We do not comply with government. We very publicly did not get permits to build our houses. We very publicly do not pay land taxes. And how do we do this and not go to jail? Well, first of all, I'm willing to go to jail. I'm willing to leave this physical body for this truth. Right? We are demonstrating the Garden of Eden ideals here. And nobody has ever come here and said this sucks. So we have got many government officials who have come here. And by the time they leave, 100% of them are with us because there's nothing to argue with. We're simply doing it. Yeah, it's true.
That's awesome.
So, my friend, I'm so thankful that we've connected. Everybody listening, please check out whyagain.org/book. For Dr. Michael Ryce's incredibly valuable information. And my friend, I'm very excited to collaborate with you, bring you on as an advisor to the Earth Council, content. Your content is really, really important as you know more than anybody. So I just want to thank you.
And if anybody if this conversation is making sense to anybody and they want support 5 days a week from 1 till 2 o'clock Eastern time, they can simply call into my radio show, Mind Shifters Radio, and ask questions or be engaged. Our show's been going on now for 14 years. We're in our 14th year, 5 days a week, an hour a day. Actually, it's 2 hours a day now. Last 4 or 5 years, we've been doing 2 hours a day. And all they do is call on their phones. Most people have got unlimited long distance. It can be done on computer, but just dial into 563-999-3581. 563-999-3581 from 1 till 2 o'clock, and we'll have a conversation. If anybody's got any questions, needs help, support in these tools, it's there. Our website is about 20,000 pages. You can do the forgiveness process right there on the site. Our YouTube channel, I don't know, we've got hundreds and hundreds of videos. We've got over 5,000 hours in our archives in the radio show, and basically all of that content is just this conversation going forward with every detail that we can come up with, every tool. There's a whole series of different tools. Why is this happening to me again? Leads to healing through relationships, leads to communication. Did you hear what I think I said? Leads to codependence, to interdependence, leads to empowered to heal, leads to, about 20 different workshops, each one with a different set of how-to tools achieve that result. So it's all there and it's all available. And we do everything we can as freely as we can. And so, people who want to participate and support us can pay for it, but otherwise it's all there free as well. Yeah. And then I do one-on-one. People come to Bristol, Virginia, and they get a hotel for 3 to 5 days, and I do one-on-one face-to-face work with them in what I call quantum still point. How do you move past the state of living in a body-mind unit to living in an energy system, stepping into that quantum space? How do you get the traumas out of the tissue? Because that's ultimately what needs to happen. How do you get the traumas out of the tissue and transform physiology so that it is what it's designed to be, and that is a state, a space where the incarnation of love is welcome and expresses in the world. And that's basically the the sum and substance of what I've spent the last 50 years developing. So I'm delighted to connect and look forward to seeing, where does it go from here?
Oh, I love it. Oh my gosh. All right, my friend. Well, I'll be reaching out to you here over the next couple of days, and
All right,
we'll
sounds
coordinate the next step, and then we'll go from there. And yeah, we'll change our innards, which will result in a more beautiful world.
Blessings, and create the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world. The world is ready for it. The world needs it. And you and I and everybody who's listening are the ones who are capable of doing that. So blessings. Appreciate you.
Blessings. All right. Thank you, sir. All right, Dr. Michael Ryce. We'll be chatting again soon. Thanks, everybody.
All right, bye-bye.